Hey guys, welcome to Unscripted Success, where I invite amazing guests that have taken the road less traveled and found success. Today, we're going to take questions from you, the professional community, on topics related to career and business. Let's get started. We have Tomas Keenan here. Thomas, how's it going?
Braxton, what's up, man? It's good to see you again.
You too, man. I'm so excited that you're here, and I appreciate you hopping on with me. A little bit about Thomas. So Tomas Keenan is a renowned custom car audio installer, and he evolved into a COO after co-founding a top GPS tracking installation company. He transformed into a high-level business coach for successful entrepreneurs, relocating from New York City to Texas to establish Step It Up Academy. Thomas is a two-time best-selling author, sought-after public speaker, and host of the Step It Up Entrepreneur podcast, attributing his triumph to consistent daily progress. Thomas, anything you want to share with the audience before we get going?
Never stop working on you. And if I had to go back in time, there was a big period of time from the age of about 17 to 35 where I worked solely on the skill set and trade, which was the car audio world, right? I was really good there, but I forgot to continue to educate me in other areas of life.
I love it. Work on yourself, not just on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Love it, man. Cool. You ready to get some questions under the wraps here?
Always.
All right, man. So here's the first one. So how I do this is I'll kind of give you a headline as the question, and there's also a kind of a story behind it. So question one is, how do you prevent the crash and burn? I imagine a ton of entrepreneurs doing caffeine runs, Adderall, and all types of energy enhancers to speed up their productivity, only to speed up into a dead end, hitting a brick wall. How do you prevent from crashing? Do you do pivots? And how do you prevent the inevitable burn from crashing? I know you guys better probably have an idea, and so interesting to hear your thoughts. So, Thomas, what do you think about that?
Fantastic question. I think that in the startup phase of business, when you're first getting going, like, you do what the hell is required. And if that requires you to stay up late and, work at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock at night, depending upon which side of the spectrum you fall on, you just do it, man. And like we've all been there before, but there comes a point in time where that's not going to, you can't sustain that forever. Also, I find that when you start doing, you're available at any moment for your clients, for your family, for your employees, they take advantage of that. So the way that you kind of counteract that, in my opinion, is you have to get really dialed in on your time, and you better put up boundaries on how and when people can interact or ask help from you. And one of the toughest things that I had to learn over time, and I still have to learn it to this day, and you're probably the same way, right? It is what it is. And we like to help people. So someone reaches out to us and says, hey, could you help me with this? Like, oh yeah, no problem. What else now has to suffer because you said yes to this thing over here that really isn't going to help you out in any way, shape, or form, right? We like the dopamine hit of helping someone put out a fire or providing service to them. So one of the hardest things I had to learn is actually how to say no, and that it's okay to say no occasionally.
Love it. Yeah, that's something that I've been really learning really big this year, is like time blocking has become a very big thing for me, because it's become like, it's beyond a necessity for me at this point, especially this year with everything I have. And it's like, I can't remember, I saw a YouTube video a while back, and I don't remember who the speaker was, but someone asked him a similar question, and he kind of made the comment like, your hustle, what you're doing right now, you're is a 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. gig right now. Like, there's no way about it. If you're sitting here telling me where you want to go, and you're not going to get there for years unless it's a 4 a.m. gig for you. So that's what you got to do, buddy. But I agree also, like, that is not sustainable. And me especially, I'm not a morning person at all. Like, getting up at 4 a.m., I can't pull myself to do it. It's so hard. I'd rather stay up till 4 a.m. than get up at 4 a.m. almost. So yeah, huge thing to understand time blocking, I feel like, and also being able to recognize your limits, your boundaries. And I think something also that I've discovered with myself is, even if I do try and do that gig where I'm hustling like feels like 24 hours a day, you got to take a moment of pause and realize, hey, your fatigue is actually causing the time to drag on, and you're becoming less productive because of it. Yep. And being able to recognize that and see it is important as well. So maybe you do just hustle and grind as hard as you can, but also have the intuition to recognize that when you get extremely fatigued from it, that you got to take a break, or you got to get past to it.
Yeah, you start making bad decisions. And the quality that you're producing in your work, whatever it is, if you're writing systems and processes, if you're automating things in the back end like you do, like, it's going to suffer if you're doing that and you're not at the peak levels of optimal sleep and performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's funny. Sometimes we come, and this applies everywhere. We come across in life, we got these monster problems that we're facing, and like, man, this is a major obstacle or hurdle I have to overcome. And we sit there and we rack our brain, we can't come up with a solution. And when that happens, that's when you should take pause. That's when you go and rest and relax, get some R&R, right? That's when you go for a nice 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile walk to clear your head. Right. And it's amazing when you get back into it, all of a sudden, like, oh, there's a solution. When you least expect it, there's a solution because you actually took your focus off of creating the solution.
Yeah. I've realized that, like, there's a guy that I saw in a talk one time at a conference, and he talked about how I wasn't, when I was in my early 20s, I wasn't off playing Xbox like my friends were and things like that, distracting myself. And it was always about the business. And I totally get that. But that's something I realized is, like, you got to have that break. You got to have that mental, like, pause in order to, like, recalibrate and reconfigure what you're doing. So absolutely. And it's interesting too, like when I was scanning through these questions, when my assistant sent them to me, there's another question that's going to come up that I have an interesting response for, that talks about what happens when you get sloppy. So those listening, be sure to stick around for that, because I had a pretty big catastrophe happen to me as a result of getting fatigued and getting sloppy. But awesome. Any other thoughts about that one, Tomas?
You know what you're worth, right? That's also a key piece. So study your time. I got a 2-week time study that I put all my clients through. It's awful. It's like the worst exercise ever, but it's worth it to do it because you really understand where you're wasting your time. But also know the KPI of what you're worth per hour. Right. That's been a key piece for me over the years. Is first of all, it's a KPI that I think everyone should establish, whether you are business owners, or not, is irrelevant. Know what you're worth per hour. And then anything that's below that dollar amount, go source it out and have someone else do it for you.
There needs to be some sort of a hybrid model for a lot of people that are traditional W-2 employees, where they can almost outsource certain things as a leeway to let them be more productive in what they're doing and have that breather. Absolutely. Love it. Cool. All right. Question number 2, how to find the right marketing agency. The primary source of business for our firm comes from direct outreach to potential customers. I'm looking for a marketing agency, but haven't had much luck after speaking to a few. Most of them seem experienced or not able to do what we need. What do I need to know to find a great marketing agency?
Tough one. First off, and look, man, you're very experienced here. I've got decent experience in this area as well. There's a very low barrier of entry for 2 pieces in the business space. One of them is business coaches, is what I do. And one of them is marketing, which is pretty much a lot of what you do, right? You have to be very careful and do your research if you're going to go and work with people in both of those areas, in my opinion. I mean, that just applies as general good old business practices to begin with, but especially in the business coaching and marketing space. Anybody who thinks that they've had a little bit of success all of a sudden one day, it's going to be easier for me to be a coach or a marketer, and they go out there and they do it and they suck. So be very cautious. For me, when it comes to marketing, it's funny. It's funny we have this question here, right? Because what the audience doesn't know is that, I don't know, it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was working at a company and I was interviewing you for a marketing position, right, to come in and do some work with us. And I have enough knowledge of marketing and how to automate and run back-end systems, which I think is a key piece right there. You have to have enough knowledge to know if someone's bullshitting you or not, right? I know the basics, and I can get back there and do enough damage myself to know if someone like you who was coming in, if you really knew what you're talking about or not, right? And if you recall, one of the things that I asked you for is like, hey man, we're using this specific software over here. You tell me that you're an expert in there, but I want to see some proof. And you said, all right, no problem. You said, hold my beer. And about 4 minutes later, you sent over a Loom video proving to me that you actually knew what you were talking about. Right. So a couple pieces there I would look out for. Look out for as for references. Hey, who's a client that you've worked with who's had outstanding results, and can you put me in touch with them and have a conversation? Is this person truly delivering the results that they say they are? And man, one of the things that I hate is, because I've been burned by this multiple times over the years, is you got a lot of these lead generation style marketing companies that will deliver like terrible leads to you. Terrible. Like, I got this lead off of Facebook. Okay, it's an 87-year-old grandma who hit the Facebook page like or interact button somehow, and now all of a sudden you're telling me this is a quality lead? No, it's not. So I think and again, marketing is so vague. Like, there's so many different areas of marketing that you also need to focus and figure out what do you need? Do you need social media marketing? Do you need email marketing? Do you need SMS marketing? Do you need someone to run back-end automations to actually build a system for you? Are we talking automated, AI chatbots, which is like the latest craze right now? Figure out what it is you actually need from a marketing perspective, and don't just say, I need to go hire a marketer. Cool. It's too big.
Yeah. I think a lot of people want, like, that's what they think a marketing agency is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I need to do. And so I'm just going to put all my faith in this external resource and hope that it works out. So many people treat it like that. I was in a conversation. It's so funny. I was in a conversation with someone. They saw my TikTok. They saw what I've been able to do with my TikTok and things like that. And they were asking me like, we've gone to so many social media marketing companies that they don't seem to be able to do what you've done. And like, they wanted me to kind of speak to that. And something I've realized with a lot of agencies, social media or otherwise, is that what they really are promising you without saying it is that they're going to manage your marketing and not really lead in the strategy, which is what most organizations actually are looking for. But they don't know how to articulate that because, again, they don't know what they don't know, and they're trying to put all their eggs in one basket, hoping that it works out. And I just think it's important to your point, be really clear on what it is that you're looking for, because you need to be able, as the business owner, to set that expectation for the people that you bring in. And that goes across the board. Like when I talk with people, when I do leadership coaching and things like that, it's the same thing. You're struggling with the people on your team. It's because you're not setting good expectations. You're not having clear communication about what they need to be doing. And it goes doubly for business owners as well. So, yeah. Excellent.
So there's two pieces that I find a lot of business owners, they think, oh, I'm going to get to that elevated CEO position. I've built a team and I no longer have to worry about this. And there's two pieces that I'm going to call bullshit on, because I don't think so. And I think that as a founder, as a leader of a company, no matter how big or grand you built this thing, you always will have to own a piece of this, right? That's sales, right? At the end of the day, if you're the founder of the company, you are going to be the chief closer. So when that big client comes in, that well client who wants the special, I'm going to hold your hand service, your team's going to come and ask you for help. They just aren't. Okay. And number two is you have to have your finger on the pulse at all times when it comes to the actual marketing message that's going out for your company. It has to be your message, it has to be your voice. And so often, going back to marketing as a vague piece, we were like, oh, someone told me, or a coach of mine told me that I need marketing. I don't have enough marketing. So I'm just going to go look for a marketing agency. And then you hire that marketing agency, you spend 7, 8, 9, 10 grand a month. And you expect them to pull out and extract this voice of yours and turn it into this magical thing. And I hate to break it to you, it just doesn't work that way.
Yep. I found a lot. So you know the tech company that I used to work at, without saying names, but I saw this a lot with the leadership there, is things got so bad with them speaking about having their pulse on things. They were so tone deaf to what was actually happening around the company. They were completely oblivious to a lot of really weird stuff happening with personnel and things like that just it was a culture of even my immediate leadership, or another department's immediate leadership couldn't go to the executives and say, hey, this is what's going on, because they created that barrier, whether they want to admit it or not, about having that open communication, having that pulse on things. And I think that carries across. That's something so easy I've found that business owners fall into, is not, some people get the idea that hiring people and being able to delegate to them means that you delegate the accountability to them as well. And that's just not how it works, to your point. No. So excellent thought. Cool, man. Question number 3, how do you maintain your health while building a company? You're going to be more of an authority on this one than I am. How do you maintain?
I'm getting continually already.
I can already tell. How do you maintain your health while building a company, getting enough sleep, exercising, eating well, etc.? Whenever I see the story of most people who made a successful company, they always tend to sacrifice sleep and in general seem to lie to themselves that these bad habits are what got them where they are. I know this is a question of discipline, but is this true balance really possible?
Yeah, the balance is possible. And I've been on both ends of the statute here. Okay. I was the guy who was like, I don't have time for that crap. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's go work 100 hours this week and make things happen. Excuse. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to wake up early. I don't need sleep. And over the course of several years, so this is my second company. My second company I owned for 11 years before I exited that business. And I just didn't take care of myself. It was way on the back burner. I was worried about building this company and making things happen, hiring and firing employees, dealing with the nonsense there. I was a dad, had 3 kids. Had a dog at home, all of the things are going on. So the health and fitness was the last thing I focused on. And I went from being a pretty good high school athlete to a really fat 37, 38-year-old guy, right? So, I mean, let's give some numbers here. You've met me in person. I'm not a small human, right? I'm 6'4". Right now, today, I weighed in yesterday, not today, yesterday I weighed in at 272 pounds, okay? I've been taking care of myself now for about 5 years straight, which I'll get into in a minute. But go back in time, I was 315 pounds at this height with not a stitch of muscle on my body and just not eating healthy, drinking too many beers and just, we don't have time for that. Let's go to work. Let's work harder. And had absolutely zero energy as well. You want to take it a couple layers deeper, and then we can go into the whole, medical side of things. When I started so yes, I did have to sacrifice things for my company to get up, which yes and no. And when it got to a point where I started making some decent money, I was like, okay, cool. Let me go take care of myself now. I also started hanging around people who prioritize taking care of themselves, and they started to rub off on me, literally. So, okay, cool. Let me put a little bit more effort and energy into this. And I started with it. And for the first 2 years, I went to the gym 3-4 days a week, hired a trainer, and I went early. And I'm not I'm not a morning person. Like, my DNA says you are a night owl. And this is me flipping my life upside down. Went in and started working with this woman, and for like the first 2 years, I didn't see a single stitch of results. I got stronger, but I didn't see any difference physically. I went to the mirror. I didn't see any difference in a weight loss. I also hadn't cut out the alcohol. I also hadn't changed any eating habits, but I did feel a bit better, and I was definitely stronger. Fast forward to COVID, and I got to sitting at home. I was still living in New York at the time, and I'm like, let's put it this way. For the first time in history, society gave you the okay to sit home and be a lazy POS and no, don't do anything. We want you to stay home and do nothing. Oh, by the way, we'll send the alcohol to your home. So I fell for that trap. I watched every episode of Tiger King, spent the first 3 weeks of COVID, kind of quarantined at home. We're like, oh, this is cool. This is a vacation. And I got real tired of sucking back Coronas and eating Oreos. And I said, all right, this is kind of a test. So we have two paths we can go down here. I can go down the path of average, which is what most people are doing, which is let's sit back, let's not do much, let's eat a lot, let's drink a lot. Or I can go to war with myself and start dialing it. And that's the option that I chose. And that's when I started taking things really seriously when it came to health and fitness. But this has been something where, again, go back to the time study, go back to what you're worth per hour. So as I started dialing myself in, right, getting my blood checked and getting my hormones correct is a big piece of the puzzle for me. That's what I was talking about, the medical stuff, right? So overworking myself for years on a poor diet and being overweight killed the testosterone levels in my body. Okay, so now I got those back to a normal level. I've got more energy. I'm a happier person. I'm not as grumpy in me, truth. I start feeling better. I start showing up in the gym more as well. And, oh, wow, those areas of life start to get better. And also the business areas start to get better along with it, side by side, which is pretty cool to watch.
Go figure.
Yeah.
I noticed like there's been times where like I'm much better, and like the gym is one element and it can be a big element, but it's not the only one. But I found that the times where I am dedicated to making sure I hit the gym, whatever I got to do just to make it happen and block time out to do it and stuff. Like, I noticed not just a physical difference in myself, but very much like I always have heard people say what it does for you mentally, what it does for your brain is so huge. And I'm like, and I've never been a guy to go to the gym. I've only been doing that in, a couple of recent years. And like, it is crazy to see just how that different environment and that different of an activity, what you normally would do throughout the day, gives you, like, it broadens your capacity for decompressing, I think, first of all. And then also giving you the space to, compartmentalize everything else you're doing in your business and doing else with your livelihood, your family, and so on. It's so huge. Yeah. So I love that. And thank you for sharing your story about that. That's pretty incredible to recognize that kind of transformation. Cool. So I think, like we were talking earlier about how, balancing the burnout. And I think this plays a part in it too, because like there's so many different elements, especially us as men. I think there's so much we have to balance that can be honestly overwhelming and a big burden in some ways. Not an unpleasant burden, but a burden nonetheless. And being able to balance family and work and play and health and all these, and some of us, we go to church and we try to be giving and try to be good human beings, all that type of stuff, and be good in our community. So much to balance. So it's crazy to see how I've seen, at least, that just that one element of taking care of your health can bleed into and impact all the other.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, look, here's the deal. Where we all tell ourselves these lies, all of us. So a lot of people tell ourselves these lies as entrepreneurs. It's like, all right, cool. I'm going out there and I'm doing all of this hard work for the family. I'm sacrificing hours. I'm sacrificing my health and my time because I want to set the kids up for success. I want to get the nice big house and the nice full cars for the wife. And yet you're over there not taking care of you. So without you there, period, the end, how are you going to continue taking care of them? And when I kind of looked at it and changed my perspective on it from that angle, it was like, oh, okay, cool. I need to do some stuff. And going back into the medical side of things, I had done so poorly of taking care of me. My stress levels are up, cortisol is up. You're a small business owner, you're worrying about payroll. I got 25 people working for me at one point, which is bananas. And what wound up happening was my actual physical health started to suffer. So I went into work one day. I still had my service-based company. I had to go see a client in Brooklyn. And halfway through the visit to that job site, man, I don't feel good. Like my guts hurt. Went home that day, laid in bed for 3 days, couldn't move, like in a fetal position. And my wife comes in and she's like, "You okay?" I was like, mumbled something, right? She goes, "Do you want me to take you to the hospital?" And I said very clearly, yes. I'm not one to go to the hospital. I don't like going to the doctor. Like, it's not my thing. So when I said yes, she was like, "Oh, that's not good." So wound up going to the hospital. And I had been through this a couple of times in my life up to this point, but now like it was the worst it's ever been. You go to the hospital, they run some tests and whatnot. It turns out my stress levels basically cause acute diverticulitis in me.
Ooh.
So when my stress goes up to a certain point, diverticulitis takes over. And it's not fun at all. Like it's super painful. Like it puts me down. So now I'm very cognizant of that, and I do everything that I can do to keep the stress levels down so that doesn't happen.
That's huge. That reminds me, one of the crazy things that I've done is work in the oil field of all places. And what I did, thankfully I wasn't out there fracking. What I did was manage all the water treatment plants. So when you frack with water, they pipe it into this plant in a pond or a tank or whatever, and your job is to manage all the automation on the facility to clean the water, sell oil, things like that. And it was the most demanding thing I've ever done in my life, ever. And I remember, like, you're working nights, you're working 14 hours a day, 7 days straight sometimes. I remember when I first got orientation, I worked 2 weeks straight, night after night for 14 hours. It was crazy. So then fast forward a year, and I'm doing that kind of job. And I remember coming home from work, it was in the morning because I was working nights. And my wife kind of came to embrace me, and she gave me a hug, and she's like, kind of like doing this kind of thing, like feeling around. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "You're really skinny." And I stopped for a minute. I realized that I was getting so stressed and so overwhelmed that I literally wouldn't eat anything for that entire 14-hour shift. And like, I realized, holy crap, like I got to get out of this. And so like a week later, I quit that without a plan at all, because I realized in that moment, like what it was doing to me, and it was not good. So yeah, good thought. Cool. All right. Question 4. I'm in a difficult situation where I despise my current job. The pay is not good enough, and I have to meet a quota even to earn my commissions. And now I'm underperforming because of my lack of interest in it, and I might be terminated soon, but I need to support my family. Previous attempts at taking a leap in business have failed, and this has caused my wife to lose faith. Despite those failures, I feel that things are finally aligning for me to succeed. How do I transition from my current situation to financial stability and freedom through entrepreneurship? Any business ideas that I can get up and running quickly would be appreciated.
Lots to unpack there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. If you're not happy at the current job, get the hell out, because it's causing so much more damage than you think, right? Not only to you, but it's also to the company. Because if you're not filling up 100% yourself each and every day, you're actually doing that company a disservice. And me as a business owner, I wouldn't want you working for me if you're not going to show up 100%. So it's not fair to you personally. It's not fair to the boss or the owner of that company either, or your coworkers. So get out of there. And if you're not ready to dive into entrepreneurship at this point, if you don't have a product or a service that you have in place or a structure that you're passionate about, then don't go half-heartedly into that either. Go find yourself another job if need be. Stabilize the income. Ensure that you're in a good environment. Like, listen, Braxton, I'm not like you. But for me, if I'm going to work for somebody, right, and which I've done several times in my career, even though I've owned several businesses too, when I'm going to work for somebody, I need to ensure that the culture there is good for me too, right, as best as possible. And sometimes we make poor mistakes. But go and look for a place that kind of is good for you, even if the pay isn't exactly where it needs to be. Go get that baseline stabilized. And now, if you're in a better emotional or mental state, cool. Now let's go burn some hours after work and start building that next iteration of your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me, like when I got so burnt out in the oil field that I just quit without a plan at all. That's kind of similar to what I did. Like you needed to have something that was enough just to make ends meet, but use that, and hopefully if you're doing something that's just making ends meet, then that job is allowing you enough bandwidth to be able to focus on something. And I remember doing that. And the first 3 times I did that, it did not work out. Like I ended up, I knew for 6 years that I really wanted to start a business, but it took that long of me knowing I was not employable to finally figure out what the secret sauce was into getting and sometimes like that's just what it takes sometimes, you know what I mean? And I think also, like, to me, a big I don't want to call it a red flag, but the way they ended the question, any business ideas that I can get up and running quickly would be appreciated.
There you go.
That sounds to me almost like,
the fastest path to cash.
Yeah. Looking for a silver bullet. I coach so many of my executive clients, like they come to me wanting me to hand them something on a platter that says, here's the exact blueprint of everything you need to do. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like you want me to, in the first 15 minutes of our conversation, you want me to tell you what to do at that level. And I don't know anything about you. And I think it's the same thing for people that are just looking for that quick fix or looking for that silver bullet. It does not work that way. And as I just explained, like it took me 6 years of knowing that I wanted to start a business, fumbling around for I don't know how long. And my wife will tell you, like I was obsessed with a lot of things that were a dead end. And like you got to allow yourself the ability and the capacity to really hone in on what that is, and don't just like be willing to jump and escape something that is so terrible for you without having somewhere to land. And I've done that before. It's not fun. Like I slept on the floor of my mother-in-law's apartment with my wife and my 2 young boys for 3 months because that's what I decided to do. And like, bless my wife for being willing to do that with me, but like no one should ever have to do that. And you as a man, I think, for those listening that are men, anyway, like you have to have that accountability that like, don't do that to your family. Like be willing to have the capacity to take a pay cut to get something just to make ends meet. And that is simple enough of a job that it gives you some bandwidth and some capacity to focus a little bit elsewhere so that you can build that dream.
Yep. I agree.
Any other thoughts on that one?
My first company. So, spent 22 years as a custom car audio installer, and I was 20 years old, working for a dude. I loved the industry I was in, but got to a point where I was like, I know more than this guy, and I can do it better than him. And I quit my job with $300 cash to my name and a handful of tools. And I started my first business. That business lasted 5 years because I was hard-headed. Right. But it ultimately failed because I didn't know enough about business or setting up the back end structures that are really necessary for business. So here's a piece that I find often when it comes to companies failing. Most of us have this passion. It's a hobby. It's a skill set that we develop. And we're like, oh, I'm just going to go do that. That's my business. Cool. I'm all for it. However, where we screw it up is that we think that us doing that skill set, that fulfillment, that trade, we believe that's the 80% of the business that's needed to make it successful. When in reality, that's only 20% of what's needed. The other 80% is, your sales, your marketing, your back-end systems and processes, your communication, all the other business pieces that we think are just magically going to appear and work good if we just show up and do the fulfillment.
Yeah, and absolutely.
That was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made.
I agree. Yeah, that's an easy trap to fall into. When I have clients come to us for at my software company, Hitmoxie, so many of them are like, they don't understand that our job as business owners is not to do the thing that the business is. Our job as business owners is to create a system that functions, that is, automated as much as possible. And our job is to fill it up with people that it can benefit. And then as it grows and scales, we hire people and bless them with the opportunity to work doing that stuff. That's what our job is. Our job is to create the system, create the infrastructure, and then fill it up with people both internally and externally to serve them properly. Love it. Well, man. Final question. What is your, this is the question I referred to earlier. What is your one big failure story that actually helped you in your business life, big or small? You always hear gurus touting how failure is necessary, but you don't always hear their reason for saying it. Would love to hear it from you guys.
We just talked about it. My biggest failure was my first business crashing and burning after 5 years, and I was really good at what I did. But again, I thought that all I had to do was kind of build it and they'll show up kind of deal. Like, okay, cool. So I rented out, I leased this location. I've got a retail car audio store. People come in, they buy products from me, and then we also sell the labor, the installation of the product. If we make you smile from ear to ear when you're done the leave, right? Really good at it. We did great work. But if you don't market a business, like people don't just magically show up one day and want to spend money with you, especially when it's a high ticket item like some of the stuff we were doing. So that was the biggest failure, right? And I didn't pull the lessons learned out of that for many years. So fast forward, that company closed. I think it was 2005, 2006 is when I shut the door on that company. Went to work for someone for a couple of years, got back on my feet financially, wound up getting married. And a couple short months after I got married, I got the itch again to go. I was like, I'm done working for people, right? Like, I'm out of here. Got to go work for myself again. And it's funny because when I closed the first business, I swore to myself I'd never do it again because it was that painful. And here we are 3 years later, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Let's go volunteer for this BD again. So started the second company, and I had a partner, and we got involved. So we shifted from car audio to GPS tracking and dash camera installs, commercial vehicle, and went in, did it, and we made the same dumb mistakes because he also was a business owner once before and failed. Right, same industry as me on the retail car stereo store. We go into this second business together, and we made every one of those mistakes over again. We were just two technicians. I wouldn't say even owning a business, right? Owning a job. And the only reason it didn't fail within those first 5 years is because there was two of us, and we're both hard-headed and both, workaholics and willing to do whatever, and, sacrifice the sleep and sacrifice, the family time and all the stuff we talked about earlier. 5 years into it, my wife comes to me and she goes, I'm pregnant. Okay, cool. Life-altering, life-changing event. And that right there was one of those things that actually started to shift my perspective at the age of 35. Like, oh, there's potential here with this company. You're a really good installation technician, but I know nothing about it. And that's when I started, going on. Mind you, times are changing too now. More things are available on the internet at this point. Start finding different pieces of software, and these other pieces of software can help you do certain things in the company. Okay, cool, but I don't know how to use that stuff. So how do I go and find a community of people who can kind of teach me this along with my just business 101? And went down that path and looked and wound up hiring a bunch of different business coaches and joining some masterminds. And I don't regret a single bit of it because that was really what infused that knowledge into me in a very rapid pace. I also realized that here I am at 35 and I'm finally wanting to learn some stuff. So I need to double down in order to get to where I should be at this point, in my opinion. And that was the biggest piece, man. But so fast forward a little bit more. My wife comes to me. I pushed for this one. I'm like, hey, I want to have a second kid. All right. And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm getting older here. Right. The big 4-0's creeping up on us. And I'm like, I want to have a second kid. So we make it happen. Couple weeks later, after we find out that she's pregnant, she comes to me and she goes, yeah, guess what? It's not one, it's two. It's like, oh, okay. This is a shock. So, all right, it is what it is. We've been given this opportunity. I was terrified about it, having twins. Terrified. Yeah. Which I think is kind of funny now looking back at it because it really wasn't that bad. So fast forward some more. 6 months after my twins were born, I had a boy-girl twin. Right? One's a boy, one's a girl. My twin son, Thomas, wound up having an intestinal blockage. In the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, massive 2-foot blizzard snowstorm in New York where we were at the time. And of course, this is happening in the middle of this complete snowstorm. So long story short, my wife wound up taking him into the hospital. I get a call from her. She's like, hey, we have to go in for emergency surgery now because he's not doing well. That's when I picked up the phone and, called my company and told everyone on the team, hey, I don't exist until this is fixed. My family and my son are my priority right now. I don't care what's going on in it. And the difference was, because in the first business, I got hurt as well. And I hurt my back. I herniated multiple discs in my back. I had to walk away from the company to go fix me with no health insurance and nothing in place and barely 2 nickels to rub together, which is never fun. And that was the final straw that broke the camel's back in that business. Fast forward now to business 2. my son's sick. He needs my attention. My family needs my support. And I called everyone at my company and said, like, hey, I don't exist until this is fixed. And when I went back into that company 3 or 4 weeks later, it was still there. It has still made money. We had hired 2 more people. Like, the systems and the processes, and like we talked about before, this structure, this business that we built functioned without my day-to-day input. So now that was like the litmus test of me actually seeing if all of the hard work that I put into the past couple of years was really worth it. And you just can't change my mind at this point. Like, because without doing that work, I would have been in a really bad situation with my son getting sick.
For sure. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. A huge example of working on your business versus working in it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a huge takeaway for our listeners to hear that kind of, not just a pivot, but also just the contrast and what that meant for you. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So going back to the question, thinking about like what my biggest failure was, this isn't honestly a direct answer to the question the way it was framed, but this is the one that was most impactful for me. So going back to when I worked in the oil field, the thing that finally broke the camel's back and I decided to just up and leave without a plan was talking about, so we were talking earlier about, what happens when you get burnt out, you get sloppy, right? And so I'm working 14-hour nights. It's the middle of the night in the Rockies in Colorado. It's cold. It's dark. You can't see anything. And you're on this plant, this, 50-acre plant all by yourself. And there was a job where miles away, they were pumping in water that needed to be treated. It's in a line underground and it comes out in a pond, the literal pond in this plant that I ran. And everything's automated, but every once in a while you have to open a valve or something like that. And so I knew the job. I knew it was scheduled. I knew the SOPs and everything, but I was so tired and I got so sloppy that I overlooked one valve. And for some stupid reason, I don't know how many pounds of pressure behind the line, instead of asking the guys on the other end to let the pressure off so I could open the valve for them, I just flat out opened it. And it was something out of a movie, watching this screen just freak out and red going everywhere and emergency. And I heard a huge like explosion and I'm like, oh no. So I walk outside and the pressure had caused a pipe that was above ground at that point, and it goes into the pond. It caused that pipe to shoot, I don't know how many feet in the air. And this is an 18-inch in diameter pipe that pumps frack water into this pond. And there, I can hear it raining on the cabin that I'm in and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? So then I go look at the pipe and it's all mangled and it's barely usable. And so I'm like, I have to, and on top of that, it was like 20 minutes before my shift was over. So the guy to replace me for the shift that night was already showing up. And then this happens. Yeah, it's like there's so much. I like just talk about a panic attack. So I had to report it, and I show up for work. I don't know if it was the day next day or the day after that, and they had to use a full-size crane to come in and replace this pipe on top of it all. And so to me, like huge lesson. I always love sharing that story because, like, first of all, it sounds like you can't make it up, right? And like, to me, that was a huge example of like, okay, you got to know your limits. And like us guys, we always want to think we're Superman, right? And I think a little bit of humility is required, especially in positions and jobs and businesses where a lot is demanded of you like that. And so, yeah. And so it was crazy because that was, at that point, I quit that job. We moved out of Colorado. And that was when we went and stayed with my mother-in-law for 3 months, where I mentioned that we slept on her floor in a spare bedroom. Like, to me, it was such a good indicator, like, okay, like I said, know your limits, but also you got to be conscious of where your skills lie. And so a lot of people very early on at every job I had for the first, 8 to 10 years of my adult life, like ultimately the owner or the CEO or the manager, whoever, ended up thinking I wasn't a good fit for it. And that's how I realized that I'm not very employable for that reason. And so for some people, and this is something that I really want my listeners to hear, is like some people, when they experience that enough where they are told repeatedly that they are, a waste of space, or they're not talented, or they don't know what they're doing, that can be really discouraging. But I think also some people start to believe it. And it's the same thing for us for business owners. Like if we're marketing on social media, we're going to get hate. And for certain people, that tends to wear on them. But sleeping on the floor of my mother-in-law's in her apartment with my wife and my 2 young boys, and trying to start a business or find a job at that period, and finally having to decide that I just need to get a job again, like we were talking earlier, to make ends meet. Like that was a huge sign to me that like, no, you're not a waste of space. You're not incapable. You just haven't found your groove yet. You haven't found your tribe. You haven't found your place in the world yet. And so for anyone listening, like that's the biggest thing that I feel like I could share on this topic is once you find where your sweet sauce is, what your superpower is, like life gets a lot better. So it's just a matter of finding what your superpower is.
Yep. I agree with that 100%, man.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about that at all?
You may have to try more times than you think where you want to go find that tribe and find that sweet spot for sure. And I would just say, like, don't give up on it. It's so easy to give up on it, you know? And like, I'll give you, for instance, I spent 11 years in my second company in an industry that I really didn't love. I saw an opportunity there for money and to do business, which we did. I made money, did business, hired people, you know, paid people. But I never had a love for it, if that makes sense. But I saw the opportunity in front of me. I was like, I think I can go handle that. But it got to a point where it was like, hey, I put 11 years into this. And I also realized that I was growing as an individual, but the people there weren't. And I no longer aligned with the people who were in this company that I helped build. And the writing was on the wall for me to just like, hey, man, as good as this is, it's actually holding you back from reaching your potential.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's like, get out of there. And talk about hate. Man, I still get this to this day. As you level up and self-develop, become a better person, a better man, better human, whatever you want to call it, right? As you educate yourself more, you're going to have people drop off anyway, right? People who once thought they're equals with you, people who are now saying, oh, he thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's so smart. He's over there making all the money, blah, 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 blah. You're going to deal with it. And when you think you're done dealing with it, it's going to happen again. So it's funny that I just spoke at an event a couple of weeks ago and talked about this topic because it's still pretty fresh and raw for a lot of reasons. But looking back in history, this started even when I was in high school because I knew from a very early age what I wanted to do for a career. Like I was that weird kid in high school who was like, I know exactly what I want to do, which was car audio. So I went and I did it, and I was so into it, and I educated myself so much in the car stereo field that I came in, even in my first day on the job at like a real car stereo store, I knew more than some like people who've been working there 10 and 15 years. And I wasn't saying that from a cocky perspective. I went and did the work. But they had a problem with it because they were like, hey, who's this new guy over here who's been working in the industry for he thinks he's you know, just better than everyone. So started dealing with it there. Then you start to evolve and you start to get good in your craft, in your field, and deal with it there some more. In the business world, you know, friends and family are like, oh, he's too good for us now. Right? And like, no, I don't think that, but this is a perception that you're putting in front of it. And if we look at it closely, as we dive into it further and further, we, through our actions and our wins and our accomplishments, right? Because you've accomplished some cool things in your life, so have I. Through those wins and accomplishments, we make others that are close to us feel inferior because they also realize that, hey, at one point in time, I had the desires to maybe go after one of the things that you've accomplished, but I gave up on that dream. I gave up on that goal because I let the boss who was talking down to me get into my head, and I started to believe it after a while.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be really careful with what you allow into your brain. Like this is one of the things going back to like taking care of you and morning routine stuff. Is you are in control of what goes into your brain, what goes into your ears or your eyes. So for me, like, yeah, I wake up, I usually do a 5:30, 6 o'clock wake up. I'm out in the gym shortly after, but the ride from my house to the gym is very intentional with what I allow it to play. So I know it's no longer music, right? And it's no longer, you know, Howard Stern, as much as I think Howard Stern's hysterical, right? It's usually an audiobook or a podcast that's going to help me self-develop and learn. So I'm ensuring that first thing in the morning, I'm pouring something into me that's going to make me better.
Yeah, it's funny being that, and this is something I love being vocal about in my career coaching company is like being the formerly homeschooled guy. Like I don't have a high school diploma. I didn't attend college. I don't have anything to show that I'm educated. And I love sharing that with people because yeah, I did get bullied on occasion when I was a kid, and I wouldn't say it would be fair to say it was severe, but nonetheless. And I was also the kid in the neighborhood that no one wanted to hang out with purely for that reason. And it's crazy to see the people that I knew when I was like 12 years old that have just reconnected with me in the last couple of years to recognize, hey, there might have been something to that. And Braxton didn't let that negative voice like derail him. And and it's interesting to see, like, yes, you will outgrow people and they might take offense to that, but you need to understand that you got to do you and you got to do what's right for your family. And it's nothing personal. Like, even people that I knew in my early 20s, I rarely keep in touch with them anymore. And they were people I considered my best friends. But at that point in life, they might have been like, I might have been the one that was perceivably inferior to them. But then some things changed and I realized I was going to take command and take control of my own career, my own life. And that motivation and that direction, it does cause you to sometimes outgrow people, and it happens. And you just have to be willing. And other people, I think, need to be conscious of that. Like, again, it's nothing personal, but you got to do you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Look, a lot of people want to hold on to the old you because that's where they're comfortable too.
That's so true. So true. Because as long as they do that, then whatever worldview or whatever bias they have can remain intact as long as they do that. Right? Yeah. Love it. That's an excellent point. Cool, man. Well, that is all the questions. In closing, is there anything you want to share about you? Like, where can people find you?
Yeah.
Like, tell us.
The best and easiest way to find me is go to connectwithtomas.com. If you go to that, it's a little, like Linktree style page. You go there and you can find links out to all my websites, my podcast, my book, all that kind of stuff. That's the best spot. And I like to keep it simple. It's like, by the way, let's just talk about that, right? Okay. From a marketing perspective, if you go into a podcast and you get asked that question, which, by the way, I've never been on a podcast where someone hasn't ended with that question. My own, right? Don't give people like 15 calls to action and send them to 18 different sites, because no one's ever going to do it, right? But if you give them one place to go, you make it super simple for them, then you have a better chance of someone actually going to that page, that area, and checking you out. So yeah, connect with Tomas. And my Tomas is spelled weird. I don't have an H in my name, so it's Tomas. Long story there, but yeah, connectwithtomas.com, and you find all my goodies there. And if you want to check them, be cool. I'm an open book. You can shoot me a DM. It really will be me responding to your DMs. So I love it, man. This is cool. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I think what you're doing here is awesome. I love the format. Cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So we'll put your information in the show notes. And just to wrap up, there's one question that I always ask all of our guests, and that is, what is one question that I should have asked you where the answer you would have given is something that you think the world needs to hear?
I think a lot of it has to go back, and we touched on some of it. We didn't go deep enough to hit it. Because we don't have enough time. We record a 6-hour podcast. I think it has to do a lot with the personal development, personal growth, and the path trajectory that you're on. For me, like over the last year, and I'll just be full blown transparent with you. Like I've had struggles here at home that I've never expected. Right, a new version of me has evolved over the course of what's called the last couple of years, and it's caused so much disconnect and strife that I'm actually getting divorced right now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Right? Yeah, it's not cool, but I appreciate the words. Right? So it's like, if you go down this path, you go down a rabbit hole of self-development and betterment for yourself, which I think everyone should, beware, going with caution, because you are going to lose people who are closest to you that you never thought in a million years would be the ones who are no longer going to be standing by your side. So I say it with caution, but I also want you to go after it, go down that path, because at the end of the day, if you continue to push through the noise and the BS, like there's going to be something good that comes out of it too.
I do agree with that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Cool, man. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, always a pleasure to talk to you. And so for those listening, thank you for joining us. This is Unscripted Success with Tomas Keenan. You guys have a fabulous time. We'll catch you on the next episode.